Okay, guys, today we're going to start our first lesson of chapter 6. And we're going to answer this question. I'm going to put it in a Google form for you to answer. What is the purpose of government? Describe some of the rules that you have to follow at school and at home. And then explain how these rules are helpful. What would life be like without these rules? We watched a video yesterday about the Capitol building and the responsibilities of the people who work there. We're going to go into that a little more in depth in this chapter. So the first lesson is the Articles of Confederation. And if you take a look here, we have the U.S. flag from 1785. It had 13 stripes for the original colonies and 13 stars for the number of states at that time.
Lesson 1. Articles of Confederation. In 1785, the U.S. flag had 13 stripes for the original colonies and 13 stars for the number of states at that time. During the Revolution, the United States faced a difficult test. Could its citizens govern themselves? After years of British rule, many people did not want a government with too much power. Once the Second Continental Congress declared independence, its representatives worked together to create a government with limited control over the people. The new government. The plan that took shape was outlined in a document called the Articles of Confederation. A confederation is a union or partnership between states. Under the Articles, the only branch of the national government was Congress. This was a legislative branch, which means that it passed laws. For a new law to pass, at least 9 out of the 13 states had to vote for it. Government under the Articles was different from our government today. The Articles did not provide for a judicial branch or courts and judges to decide what the laws mean. There was also no executive branch headed by a leader such as a president to carry out the laws. For the new government to take effect, all 13 states had to ratify or approve the Articles of Confederation. They did so in 1781. I will know how the government was organized under the Articles of Confederation. Vocabulary. Articles of Confederation. Legislative, judicial, executive, ratify, inflation, ordinance. Draw your own version of the flag that symbolizes the United States just after the Revolutionary War. The Articles reflected the states' long struggle against the power of the British king. The states wanted to avoid a strong central government. The new plan divided power between the states and the central government, but the states had more power. State leaders selected representatives to the national government. The functions of those representatives were limited, though. For example, Congress could not pass laws to collect taxes. It could only ask states to offer money. This made it a weak form of government. 1. Summarize. Write a summary of the government under the Articles of Confederation. A weak national government. Without the power to collect taxes, the nation lacked money. The American Revolution had left it in debt. The country could neither pay its own soldiers nor repay the nations from which it had borrowed money for the war. Even the money that the country did have was a problem. Today, the United States has one national currency. This currency, the dollar, is worth the same in every state. During the Revolution, each state had its own currency, and each currency was valued differently. Congress had also printed its own paper money called Continentals. Because the war caused inflation, Continentals became nearly worthless. Inflation means that prices went up while money lost value. People couldn't buy as much with their money as they had in the past. State governments tried to control prices, but inflation continued. The United States faced other weaknesses. It had no national army. Instead, Each state loaned its troops to the national government to protect the country. Congress could not enforce laws about trade with other nations. Without such laws, the United States couldn't control or improve business. Some countries refused to take seriously a nation facing such challenges. 2. Circle the 2 years on the graph that show the period of greatest increase in the cost of a bushel of potatoes. Write the difference in price in the space below. To many patriots, it looked as though the Articles of Confederation needed to be revised or corrected. A group called the Nationalists began to push for a stronger national government. The Nationalists included leaders of the American Revolution such as George Washington and Benjamin Franklin. A tax revolt. Though the national government could not collect taxes, the states could. In Massachusetts, the state decided to raise taxes that people paid on the property they owned. Desperate farmers protested. Those who could not pay were being sent to prison. Some even lost their lands. One poor farmer, Daniel Shays, had been a captain during the Revolutionary War. In 1786, he was sued or taken to court for not paying his debts. Shays joined with a group of other farmers and soldiers who had also fought in the war. Armed with guns and other weapons, they sought to close the courts that sent farmers to prison. Shays' military record made him a natural leader. He became a leader of the movement known as Shays' Rebellion. An early victory for the fighting farmers occurred in September 1786. Shays led a group of 700 men to close the highest court in Springfield, Massachusetts. Then, on January 25, 1787, Shays led an attack on one of the national government's weapons depots. His army planned to steal guns, cannons, and other weapons. Because Congress did not have an army, the state militia stopped the attack. A militia is an army of ordinary citizens who are trained for battle. Shays retreated to Vermont. The rebellion proved to be unsuccessful. However, it caused many people to fear that others would also try to take the law into their own hands. Calls for stronger government continued. New lands for new states. One decision Congress faced was about the young nation's western lands. The Treaty of Paris, signed after the end of the war, gave the United States land stretching west from the Appalachian Mountains to the Mississippi River. The land north of the Ohio River was called the Northwest Territory. Congress issued several ordinances or laws to describe how to organize the territory. The Land Ordinance of 1785 explained how the land would be divided into towns. It also provided for public schools to be opened in the territory. To describe how these lands could become states, Congress issued the Northwest Ordinance of 1787. A territory could ask to become a state when its population reached 60,000 free adult males. It also had to have a written constitution. Congress would then ratify the territory's statehood. The new state would have the same rights as any of the original 13 states. The Northwest Ordinance had different effects on different people interested in the area. Because it made slavery against the law in the Northwest Territory, it helped to stop the spread of slavery north of the Ohio River. It guaranteed religious freedom. 3. Write the abbreviations for the current states that grew out of the Northwest Territory in the spaces on the map. It also stated that the United States would never take Native Americans' land without permission. However, many Native Americans still had to fight to keep settlers off their land. The success of the Northwest Ordinance did not make people forget that the government had serious problems. The nation's debts, its worthless currency, and troubles such as Shays' Rebellion all showed the need for a stronger central government. In May 1787, representatives from each state were called to Philadelphia for a meeting to revise the Articles of Confederation. The changes made during that meeting were much greater than anyone expected. 4. Summarize. Why were Americans interested in having a weak national government? 5. At the Town Museum, you read a letter from a traveler writing home in 1781. She describes the trouble she is having with paper money under the Articles of Confederation. What might the letter say?